All right, very good. Everyone, thank you for letting me participate. My name is Mark Jeghers, and I'm over in San Jose, California, where it's 8:30 in the morning. So, but I hope I'm awake enough to do this. So, there's a lot to talk about. So, I'm going to blast through these slides pretty quickly in order to make sure I don't run over time and that there's a little bit of time for questions. And I may do a screen share for a little bit if time's permitting. So, so what Playgen is, it is a piece of software that automatically generates fully randomized playlists where you have a collection of many songs or a few, and you want a totally random selection of those songs to be done so that you never ever have to intervene. You never have to set up a playlist. You just let it run on its own. I've been using it for several years now in Liquid Soap. It uses JavaScript technologies with Node and Express. And here in the presentation is my GitHub URL where you can find it. There, I'm going to give a very high level overview of it here and try to answer questions if time allows. But you can get all the details you need in the documentation that's in the GitHub because I've spent a lot of time making it as thorough as I can. So, what is GitHub? Well, it's got a full set of features. There's completely randomized song selection that can be left unattended. It's based on Node Express technologies, which means it's all fully written in JavaScript. It includes an API, which means Application Programmers Interface, which is fully RESTful. So, what that, for those who are not familiar, it's RESTful. REST is a way of designing APIs to be very clean in their design. But you can go do some Googles to learn more about that. It can be accessed programmatically so that you can use a Linux command line, or you can have your own web app or software tools or Liquid Soap itself. They can all directly call this data service for what they need. It supports multiple different playlists, and there's some advanced features that I'm going to go through that make the randomness better. Okay, because as it turns out, pure randomness isn't really good enough. So anyway, I'll share some of what that's about. Um, as a convenient shortcut, normally you would set up a text file and you'd put a list of all the songs that you wish to have in your playlist, in my case, MP3 files. But as a shortcut, you can configure Playgen to simply use a directory, and all of the song files in the directory will be automatically selected to be in that playlist. There's a recent feature that I added, which is a new request feature where you can ask for an on-demand song to be put to the front of the list, temporarily bypassing the random selections. It uses MySQL internally. There is a plugin architecture that I've recently added, which will allow other developers to add their own customizations. And right now, it only uses HTTP. It does not use secure HTTP because I assume that it's going to be operating behind a firewall where you'll already be secured. So there's a recent support that I added where it can run as a Windows 10 service for those people who are actually trying to run Playgen on a Windows machine. I call this a beta feature because it's working for me, but the testing is limited. So I want to just be careful how much I promise there, but you can try it out if you need it. The API features in Playgen also include song list and status information for web apps, and my own web portal that I use for managing my own web servers. It shows me the full status of both Liquid Soap and the IceCast system that it's feeding into. So my own system here, it's a modest, simple system. I don't have a lot of listeners. I primarily made it for myself. But here you have Liquid Soap and several different programs are streaming into IceCast. I have several different options of what I can listen to. But then internally, Liquid Soap is calling Playgen with an API call. Every time that it wants to select a new song for the next song to play, Playgen will provide that, and I'll show you an example later on. And then I have my own web application, which is like my own personal portal where I manage my data servers, and I can see all the status because I'm also calling the API calls in Playgen there. And here's just a brief snapshot of what my web user interfaces look like. As you can see, there's one screen that's showing a list of all the songs in a playlist. There's another one that's showing the history of all the songs that recently played in the playlist. If time permits, I'll actually try to share the screen and show mine in live time. So the requirements: you need a reasonably new version of Node.js. You need MySQL, and preferably it's most wise to run it on the local host on the same computer for efficiency. I am currently running my system on a CentOS 7 server machine, but most other reasonable flavors of Linux can probably run it fine, and I have routinely tested it on Windows 10. Now, let me share how this random selection actually works. There's several problems if you just do the simplest form of random selection, well, like pick a number between 1 and 10. The simplest way of selecting that is just to randomly choose a number, and then again randomly choose a number again and again. Well, if you do that with a song list, there's several problems. The same song could get selected over and over just out of the luck of random selection, while other songs never get selected or don't get selected for a long time. If you have too many songs that have the same title, for example, different performances of the very same song, then they might get selected again and again. And even though, yes, it is a different song that was chosen, there is redundancy for the end user's listening experience. You could also have many songs coming from the same artist all at the same time because of pure random selection. And in the end, there's no guarantee that all of the songs in your playlist have a fair chance of getting performed. And so this is what the problem looks like. I have a list of songs, and if I do pure random selection, look at some of the problems that occurred. Like song number 11 got selected again. Some of these songs never got selected. And there are certain songs that are being duplicated, and some of these songs are probably different performance of the same song. And so there's the problem that's happening that I've described. So what I'm doing instead in Playgen is I have a algorithm of improved random selection that's geared for good human experience. Every song in the playlist will be given a random number index, and then the list will be assorted according to those random numbers. Okay, so now you're taking the entire song list and mixing it up like shuffling cards. Now, if you iterate through this list, you will step through in a random sequence, and eventually every single song will get selected. Okay, you're guaranteed that as you iterate the list. Here's this list of songs, and as you see, I have added random numbers as an index, an internal index for every one of the songs. And then I make a copy of this list, which is sorted according to the random indexes. So now at least some of our problems are solved because none of these songs will be repeated. If you iterate this list once, every single song is guaranteed to be played. And so now, in addition to that, there's a few additional configurations that you can do. You can set a redundant title threshold, and basically what that is how many songs do you require to go by before a song with the exact same title will be allowed to be played. And so if a duplicate title song comes up in the random selection too soon, according to this threshold that you configure, then that song will be postponed. It's not kicked out, but it gets bumped down the list to a later time. Okay, same thing for the name of the artist. You can configure if you'd like duplicate songs from the same artist to be pushed to a later time. And there's one more feature that, like I said, I've recently added a song request feature where I can on demand ask for a song to be selected, and that song will go to the front of the line as long as there's any on demand requests that have been created. Then the random selection will be temporarily bypassed, And as soon as these on-demand requested songs are all used up, then the random selection will continue. So to deploy Playgen, this is brief in a nutshell, but you can read the online documentation for more details. You get a new version of Node.js, use git clone to copy the software into a fresh new directory of yours. You need to run npm install, which downloads dependency modules. This is part of the Node Express and JavaScript world. There is a default configuration file that you need to edit in order to configure your MySQL database. And then you need to populate the playlists table in that database. And in this table, you'll set up the details about your playlist you wish to have. And again, in the online documentation, that's fully spelled out what you need to do. npm run start is a way that you can locally start your service running. And at that point, with playlists running, you can now make API calls like these examples that I've shown here. This is just a few of the many APIs that are provided. But as you can see, you can retrieve a list of all the playlists, or see the details of one playlist, or request for a new next song to be selected. Here are some of the settings that you can configure. For every single entry in the playlists table, you are describing one of your playlists you wish to have. You give it a name. You give it a path either to a text file that contains all your songs, or a directory full of song files. Give a human readable description. You give redundant title and artist thresholds that I mentioned before. And then there's some other more advanced settings that I'll describe in a moment. And there, for example, the partial title delimiters. If you have certain songs that have similar names, but they're not exactly the same, look at these 3 song titles. They're all the same song, but technically the software would think that these are different because the strings are different. You can specify partial delimiters where only up to that delimiter will the song titles be compared. So this makes it more successful in detecting identical songs in order to delay one of the redundant songs. That's an optional feature. You don't have to do it. Now, in my case, by default, I have a special convention for how songs file names are worded. Now, this, in recent times, part of why I added the plugin architecture is in order to make this optional where you can work around it, because I know that not everyone will want to do this, but this was the original design where I have very well fielded file names. And so embedded into the name of the file is all this metadata about each individual song. Now, this is very convenient for Playgen. If you are able to use this format of file name, then you have very good, efficient handling of all this data. And all of this data is available in the API calls when you're analyzing the contents of your songs. But as I'll show you later on, you can bypass that if that's problematic for you. So, for example, this song here, Perline by Sun House. It's on this particular album from this record company, the year 1965. Here is what, by default, this is what I make that song look like, or the file. Okay. So, by default, if you do that, if you have some capability to make your files match that naming format, then Playgen will process them with very, very high performance and efficiency. Now, if your files today don't match that format, you say, oh dear, what shall I do? Well, you can do one of 2 things. You can make yourself an automated shell script, which is what I've done myself, actually, and I use it repeatedly all the time. It will take my existing song files, create copies of those song files, and convert them to that naming conventions. Now, it's a little work to set up that shell script for yourself the first time, but after that, then it becomes much more easy and painless to maintain all of the naming convention of all your song files. Or the other option that you can try now is with the new plugin architecture, I have a special plugin component which will parse MP3 tags. But you do have a performance cost at startup, and I have not tested it with gigantic lists of songs. But, it's something that you can give a try to. So just so you know, so I have a bunch of my own songs that don't match this naming convention. For example, if you look at this green text here, that's the name of one of my songs' data files. Um, and so I need these songs to be routinely converted into this different naming format. And so I have made a shell script where I will read a data file. The data file has lines just like these two lines here. These are individual songs that I have, and each line tells where the song file is found, the destination where the song file needs to be copied, the original name of the file, and the final name, which matches my special naming format that I want it to be converted to. So I've got a simple shell script that does this conversion for me, and you can make something like that to provide for your needs. So this is one approach to do. This is helpful to me because in my case, I am constantly changing some of my song files because they're songs that I'm developing and recording and editing and constantly remixing and changing their mix in that song development process of recording. And so I constantly update the source copy of the song file. And so this allows me to get, by running this script, the latest, newest versions of those song files can be easily deployed. Now, I've recently added this new plugin architecture, and you can read in full details when you download the README file. This allows other users, end users, to add their own customized plugins. So maybe you need some different way of extracting song details and you don't want to use that file name convention that I have. Well, you could use the plugin I've provided in this plugin architecture for decoding MP3 tags, or you can make your own custom JavaScript plugin. I also have plugins to support different options of logging. Okay, so I have a few sample plugins already provided for both logging and for song extraction, and I have boilerplate samples of what these plugin files look like, so that other developers, if you want to take a shot at some other type of song detail extraction, then you can do that. So in Liquid Soap, we need to use a certain API that's provided in the Liquid Soap or in the Playgen data server. It's an API called Next Song, and you would send a GET request using a URL where you give the name of the playlist that you're interested in, and Next Song is the thing you want to ask for. This will return you a selection of a new song to perform that's been completely random chosen, as I mentioned before. And you can add a special option, format equal text, which is in fact the easiest way to use this with Liquid Soap, because plain text is the easiest way to do this in Liquid Soap. So on your Linux command line, you can test this with a curl command, and you can call this thing over and over and generate new song requests. If I have time towards the end, I'll share the screen and actually do some calls to my local server, and you can see it requesting new songs. And in the case of Liquid Soap, now this is smaller text. I apologize if it's hard to read, but in my Liquid Soap script, I have a special request function. There's a request function for each individual playlist. And in here, I'm using get process output, and of course that's the old 1.4 syntax. And I've got a comment here about how you would change that if you're on version 2. You'd use a slightly different API call. But in this API call, you run a system command on your local environment, which is a curl request. You're running the curl command in a local system command, and the parameter you're passing to curl is the URL, which is the API call you wish to do. This is asking Playgen to give you the next song out of the retro playlist, and you're asking just for simple text to be returned and not JSON data. Okay, so you do have to have the curl command installed on your system. If you're on Windows, you need to get something like install Cygwin and get the curl command that way, or something of that sort. And down here, when I'm setting up my source, I will use this custom request function in order to set up the requests for the song. And then that gets plugged into the actual output stream that goes to IceCast down below. So at least one person has been able to successfully take this example, and of course they did this modification for version 2 and have been able to work okay. Now, real briefly, I'm going to go through the some of the API features. And in all these examples, you would put in the name of your host, the host name of your computer where Playgen is running. And the default port is 3000, but you could customize that port to be something else. But these examples simply show you I can make an API call and I can retrieve a list of all the different playlists, and I will receive this JSON data, which has these results. And of course, I've cut off, this data is very long, so I've trimmed off some of the data, but you can see the kind of contents you get. You can call this API for your software to learn about all the playlists. Here's some other examples. Using a very RESTful design, you can do a post command in HTTP, and you can use a post request to create a new playlist. These are fully documented in the README file. Put request will update a playlist and change the details. For example, you want to change the description or the duplicate thresholds. And delete will delete the playlists, but it's safe. Your song files are not actually removed, just the entry out of the database. Okay, here's a few more. Within an individual playlist, you plug in the name of your playlist here, which for me would be like Retro or Crimson. You can retrieve a list of all the songs in the playlist. You can retrieve details about an individual song. And these are just a few examples. You can issue a request. You can do a post request, and you can include in your request body the index number of a song within that playlist that you would like to have become an on-demand request, and it will be the next song that's played, temporarily suspending the random selection. You can retrieve a list of what are all the requests right now, and my web UI uses this so I can see a table of the current songs that are in the request queue. Here's the most important one. Next song. This is the one that actually goes to Playgen and says, okay, go find the next song out of that random list and return it. And so this moves you up to the next song in the list. Every time you call this API, you will get another different song. Okay? Current song is similar. It will retrieve you the name of the current song without actually going to another new song selection. So if you call current song again and again and again, you will get the most recent song selected and you'll get the same information. So future ideas. In the future, one of the things we'd like to think about is, are there more different ways that we can use non-standardized file names? In other words, where you don't have those the metadata fields in the file name like the default that I use. I've got the one plugin that will support MP3 tags, but one of the future things to consider, are there some other things that we could do with other kind of file formats that are helpful? Though the other thing is that currently Playgen keeps a history of all your songs, so you can see a song history in your web user interface if you wish. But every time you restart a Playgen, that history gets cleared and reset. Could we make that persistent so it stays there over if you restart, you'll still see your old history. So that's one of the things that we're thinking about for future ideas. And of course, people can always send other requests for different ideas about future ideas. We're open to suggestions anytime. So here's a summary. This is a work in progress. I've been using it for several years and it's worked pretty good. Some of the special tweaks of the random selection, I believe, really improved the end user's human experience. The API allows us, it's allowed me to make my own web app where I can call those APIs and see useful data. And like I said, it is a work in progress. And only in recent time, when I started to share API with other people, I started looking and asking myself the question, what do I need to do now to make this work better for everyone else in the world and not just work well for me? And that's why I added the plugin architecture, so that these enhancements, I would be able to roll in a new enhancement more easily, or you could roll in an enhancement of your own. So hopefully that'll be something that will help us to be more forward looking. And once again, there's the link where you can download it and get more full details. Here's another snapshot of my web UI. And so I'm just a little bit past 9 o'clock. Was there time for me to show a little bit of the UI and data calls? Or
if it's very quickly, then I guess yes.
All right,
because
I'm going to be real quick.
Yeah.
And guys, I apologize that I haven't been able to look at the notes that much because I'm hurrying through this thing. Select window or screen. Oh gosh, this is going to make it really hard. There's Postman. Okay. Okay. So here, just as a very quick, simple example, here, Postman, for those who don't know, this is a piece of software that allows you to test APIs for data services. And in here, I've got my URL, which is communicating to one of my to my Playgen server that's running on my actual data server. And this is the next song request. You can see here, the last time I called this API, it returned me some song. When I'm going to send it again, and you're going to see all of a sudden I've got a different song. And if I call it again, yet another different song. And so this is going through the random selection of songs, and you've got all these different songs being selected. Now notice the last song that I chose here. If I go to this other tab, here's the current song, and it's going to retrieve that same song again and again. This is, like I said, this API is simply telling you what the current song is without changing a selection. And real briefly here, I've lost the let me quickly share one more thing real fast. I'm going to share the actual, this is my actual web UI that's running. And here it is. So this is my web user interface. I not only call Playgen APIs, but I also call some APIs on the IceCast server. So I've got the status of my IceCast server. Here from the Playgen API are all 5 of my playlists. I can go to any one of these. I can see songs that have been, this is all the songs that are in the playlist for this. I can, because I'm currently logged in, I can request one of these songs on demand. I'll request, in fact, let's just request 3 of them. When you go to the requests tab, you can see the songs that just got requested. These are the ones that are waiting to be played on demand. And then here's a history, shows a list of all the songs that have been played. And so, you know, that's pretty much, so this is my own personal web UI that I've made. You can make a similar web UI just like this, and you can use these APIs to get whatever data that you need. So, so let's see. So that's pretty much it. I know for sake of time, it's probably best if you reach out to me with technical questions probably by emailing me or communicating through GitHub. Unless, Sam, did you notice any questions that were in the chat that you thought are high value that I should address right now before you guys move on?
Well, it's hard to summarize right now. So maybe we can ask if somebody thinks he has an important or an important contribution, or maybe Gilles can summarize the chat because he was pretty active in this part.
There wasn't too much questions. Everybody is like kind of me watching what you've been doing, and the interface is actually quite cool. I think it's cool. I had just a few suggestions that I made during the chat because you were using process read on a curl connection, and you have a native HTTP.get thing in Liquidsoap that can help you get probably using native connection to HTTP. But other than that, I think it's quite
Okay.
cool.
Is that a new V2 feature where Liquid
Uh,
Soap can directly call Playgen?
it's been there for a while, but
Oh, okay. All right. So I
Yeah.
just need to be more up to speed about it. Maybe Summit offline. Can you share with me more about it in email, and I can look at making that a new feature.
I'll make a note to do that.
Very good. Yeah, yeah.
And
I'd love to directly call it without having to go out to a system call. I just wasn't sure at the time how to do it.
And other things are actually things that could also be said about Azure Cast and media ingestion I was talking about. And it's true that it's hard to find a normalized way to describe what a track is, which track it is. And I have a hard
Yeah.
time finding an open source discussion. I know a lot of professional, really closed source things that do have a strong opinion about media ingestion. And I think that we might need to do something about that. Like, what you decided here on the randomness, on the using the title, track, album, and whatever. There's Music Brains that you probably know about, and the Acoust ID that we mentioned in the chat as well, that are quite good tool for this. But I think it lacks of an actual normalization on what a track is, what track is which. And I said maybe that can be an input for you as well. I'm using MD5 sums to make sure that I'm referring to the same file on different systems. Say I have a song
Okay.
I want to play, and I want metadata. I want the cover image. I want the title to be precise, and I want to display interesting things. And I don't have an actual way. So your tool could fit in there.
So you've set up a different mechanism where you take the that checksum and you map it to like a database entry that has all the details.
Yeah. That's
okay.
That's the ugliest way, but the simplest way I use. And of course, if I have two different files referring to the same song, I'm fucked.
Yeah, right. Yeah, out of luck at that point. Okay, yeah, very good. Well, a further discussion about that's totally welcome. You guys, like I said, you guys can get me on email and we can throw around other ideas. So, like I said, this standardized embedding of the metadata into the file names. This is what worked best for me, and for the longest time, I was developing Playgen just to be what I needed. But like I said, I've gotten to the point where now it's time to make it more helpful to other people in the world. So my file name mechanism may work for some people, it might, but for others it might not. And so more inputs are definitely welcome.
And
So we can start some discussions.
Yeah, I'd be happy, and I'm pretty sure the Azuracast people will be glad. I'm seeing some people mentioning there, so it might be interested to get a discussion. And Romain is saying that randomness place is hard and stuff, and I actually plan on maybe I'll get to talk about it, but as a security in the playlist operator from Liquidsoap, you actually do have a new playlog operator, but it was already there before, and you have the check next parameter for playlist, which probably happens too late for what the kind of selections that you want, that you need, that you're doing in your Playgen. But you can actually implement quite strong, at least constrained verification to make sure you're not repeating stuff and so on inside the playlist operator. So I might get on to that a little bit later. I don't know.
Okay.
Thanks. Anyway.